This is how I stopped being a socially autistic little monkey and started being a charismatic Chad with friends. The first thing is that I got rid of the fictitious self that I was trying to live up to. So I've been on self-improvement for my entire life, but instead of seeing self-improvement as a way to better myself, I started to see it as a need to be somebody that I'm not, to be someone specifically. And so I started to generate this fictitious self in my head, this perfect self that I thought was my ultimately charismatic self that I needed to live up to, that gained perfect validation from people, that was perfectly attractive and perfectly charismatic and did all the little charisma tactics perfectly or whatever. So I created this fictitious self in my head, and I would feel the need to live up to this, but because this person is perfect and I'm by nature not, I could never live up to it. And so I ended up feeling second rate and like a loser just because I couldn't live up to this character that was impossible to live up to anyways. When I was trying to be this, I was trying to be somebody instead of just being myself. I've talked before about how charisma is something that you release from within you, but I couldn't do that because I was trying to be somebody. I was trying to develop charisma instead of just being my authentic self and allowing my natural charisma to come out. I've talked about this before in this video. Go watch that if you're interested. It's an idea that I got from psycho-cybernetics, but because I was living up to this fictitious self, I wasn't being authentic. I was trying to act specifically like certain TV characters or people I would see who I thought I needed to be like. So I stopped being awkward when I just quit trying to live up to this fictitious self and started just being who I really am. And that's the second thing that I did, is that I would think about specifically doing things that I would do and being who I really am instead of trying to be something that I'm not and do things that aren't really naturally what I would do. So it was fine for me to learn certain charismatic traits from YouTube videos online. Those were okay, but those are only good if they help to amplify your already authentic personality. So I would watch these little body language analysis videos for like Thomas Shelby or James Bond or something like that. And then I would try to do exactly what they did because, again, I thought that that fictitious self was what I needed to live up to. So I'd try to do those things and I would come off super awkward and I'd feel super uncomfortable because what I was doing was not naturally who I was. It was trying to live up to this fictitious self who I couldn't live up to. So when I started instead to just do like, okay, so an example of a charismatic trait is like an open body language or a strong eye contact. I would still do those things, but I would do them the way that I would do them that felt really comfortable. So instead of like sitting a specific way that James Bond would sit, I would sit with open body language like he would, but in a naturally comfortable position that was my own way of doing it. I know that's kind of an autistically specific detail, but that really, really worked for me. And I think that if you can relate to me, go and try this out. And I think it will work very, very well for you as well. A third thing that I did is that I started to think about living up to my slightly older, more attractive and charismatic self instead of living up to this fictitious self in my head. So being able to create an image in my head of who this slightly older version of myself is, this slightly more attractive version, who's not perfect, who's still who I am, but he's just a little bit more experienced, he's a little bit more attractive. And I try to think about, okay, in this situation, what would he say to this girl? Or in this situation, how would he be sitting or standing around? In this situation, how would he act when he walks up to his friend group? And then I try to step into his shoes and do what he would do so that I'm still being authentic, but so that I'm being not just, because there is a side of being authentic that's like just being your lazy, stinky goblin self that you are now. And you obviously don't want to do that. You want to be authentic, but you want to be your best authentic self, if that makes sense. So now if I step into the shoes of my older self, I'm still being authentically me, but I'm being my best authentic self, my most optimal authentic self. This is why I still think that it's important to do the charisma tactics so that you're not being your stinky goblin little monkey Jeffrey self, but so that you're being authentic, but you're being your best authentic self, if that makes sense. Another final thing that really helped me to unlock charisma was in order to create this slightly older version of myself, I kind of have to create an image for what that even is. So the way that I did that was I would find people to imitate, find influencer chads that I wanted to imitate that were similar to me, that kind of clicked, if you know what I mean. And then I could take those behaviors of theirs and then add that to the image of my slightly older self. So people like Hamza and Chris Williamson and Mike Thurston are people that I look up to a lot. And for some reason, their personalities just click and just kind of feel right with naturally who I am. And so I can kind of take their behaviors, I can watch their behaviors and take them, and I can put those into the image of who my slightly older and better self is. And then I can actually see clearly, like, oh, okay, this is exactly what he'd do in this situation with this girl or with his friends or whatever. And then I can step into the shoes of my slightly older self and I can be my best authentic self in that way. Hopefully that makes some sense. Again, these are some kind of autistically specific things that may not work for you, and I understand if they don't, but I want to share very specifically what's worked for me to overcome some pretty crippling social anxiety. I used to have horrible social anxiety, and there was just days and months of me just hating myself and in tears constantly because I felt like I couldn't live up to this fictitious self that I was creating in my head, and I wasn't just being who I've been created by God to be. Maybe that sounds like the cringy advice you hear from the white mom at church, but I think she's kind of right, honestly. It's really helped me to be more charismatic and to make friends and to not be afraid of the person that I really am. If this video helped you out and you want to see more very specific in-depth content like this in the future, go give this video a like and subscribe to my channel so that you won't miss my content and so that you'll get more content like this sent to your For You page. Shut out the noise, do the work. Mwah.